Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck, we are playing the deck that won the Chinese Legacy Championship that was piloted by MircaleChen. So this is a blue-black Reanimator deck list, a thing that we've seen for quite some time, and it just won't go away. We banned Psychic Frog and it's still here. It's definitely worse than it was when it had Psychic Frog, but it's still one of the top decks. I think it's the 6th most played deck in the format right now. So we are this like Entomb deck where we're trying to put Atraxa and Archon of Cruelty in and then bring them back with Reanimate and Animate Dead. But then we just get to play some other little strategies baked in here as well. So we are a 16 land deck, which is obviously very low, and we're using these Troll of Khazad-dûms to supplement that. But the thing is, our mana's actually pretty good because we have a basic that we're going to fetch all the time in this island. And then the Troll just gets off the swamp, and then we just get to play on basics, which is really, really strong. So we have a low land count, but a pretty solid mana base, which is one of the secret strengths of this deck. We've got the counter magic you would expect, as well as the cantrips. We've got ourselves some interaction in the form of Fatal Push, Brazen Borrower, and Orcish Bowmasters. The Orcish Bowmasters is kind of in some lists, but not in all of them. Same with the Fanatic. I think it is obviously a great card, and it certainly helps when you transform into a fairer plan post-board. We've also got some Thoughtseize to poke some holes. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You can only fit 3 Wastelands in this deck unless you want to cut a spell for another one. I also really like Metamorphosis Fanatic because out of the sideboard, when your opponent's bringing in like Grafdigger's Cage or whatever, this is still just a 2-mana 4/4, which is pretty good rate. I'd almost be tempted to trim one of these Animate Deads for one of these if I was building this list, but we're playing the list as it was and won the tournament. Sideboard-wise, we've got an Engine Explosives because we can't really deal with things like Grafdigger's Cage without just bouncing it for turn. Maybe that's not what we want to do, so this gives us the option to do that, as well as blow up a load of keys out of the Forge decks, or there's just all sorts of things we can do with the Engine Explosives. We've also got ourselves a little bit more removal, Dismember, Go for the Throat, Fatal Push. We've got the Fair Plan, where we brought in the Barrowgoyf and the Dauthi Voidwalker. Then we've got Harmony of the Seas and Consign for like Eldrazi and stuff like that, and then just another catch-all in Brazen Borrower. So that's the deck. I'm quite excited to try this one again. I do really like the Metamorphosis Fanatic builds. Alright, please remember to like and subscribe, and if you want to see my videos early for just £1 a month, you can become a member of my channel, and that gets you early access to all my videos. Alright, let's start jamming some Reanimator. Alright, so our opener for the first round is kind of an interesting one. We don't have a cantrip to make our Reanimate better, because we obviously need to find another piece, so we don't really have access to that. We do have some disruption, but we also have this Force of Will that doesn't do anything. I think we can probably mulligan to something a little bit better, because this is basically just going to be Thoughtseize into Bowmasters with like a Wasteland and hope that's good enough. Which maybe it is. We are on the draw. Am I convincing myself to take this one now? This is very marginal. But we get to play on basics. We have a Wasteland. Alright, I will keep this one, I've decided. We can always try and Thoughtseize one of their creatures if they are a creature deck and reanimate it. Alright, nothing on turn 1, just a forest. Interesting. We're going to go and get our basic swamp here, so we can just play on basics nicely. That's Thoughtseize. Okay, this is the sort of thing we're doing. So Knight of the Reliquary, Endurance, Mox Diamond. We don't care about the Mox Diamond. It's probably just the Knight, that's the most powerful thing. The Endurance is obviously annoying for what we're trying to accomplish with our reanimation plan, but we're not actually on the reanimation plan just yet. I think we just take the Knight. We can always reanimate their Knight and see if we can force an Endurance out of our opponent if they draw a green card. Otherwise, we can just play this and have a reasonable sized creature. It's going to be like a 1-mana 4/4 for us, which is something I'm more than happy to put into play next turn. There is a Wasteland, so we know what our opponent drew. Okay, so they're just going to hold up the Endurance. Because they can hardcast it, I'm not really in the market for trying to reanimate this. Like, if I could get 2 cards off of it, sure, but now they can just hardcast it. It's not such a good deal for us. A Reanimate. Intriguing. I think I will just play this Wasteland out. So we can just kill this Endurance given the chance. Alright, I decided not to. So they're fearful that we're going to be doing Reanimate stuff, which is pretty reasonable considering what you can see here. So they have this Thespian stage going. I don't think we're actually going to be able to do anything in terms of killing creatures with our Bowmasters. The smallest creature they have is probably going to be the Elvish Reclaimer. There might be a situation we can pick up a Dryad Arbor. I think we're better off just getting something going here. We have to be... Okay, so they're now Wastelanding our Wasteland. Sure. Getting that's fine. Now they're going to make the Thespian stage, copy the forest. Okay, then they're just playing the Endurance. Are they going to shuffle their own graveyard in? Because that's the only creature that's in play right now. Or in the graveyard, sorry. Yep, okay, they went for that play. Smart play. We do need to find a way of turning on Revolt for this Fatal Push, but that's not normally much of a difficulty for us. Okay, so we can go and get a Surveil land here, I think. Like, we could just go get an Underground Sea and reanimate their Endurance and just have more power. I think that's actually fine here. So we'll kill this guy. And we'll bring this guy back. Do I want these cards in my deck? Probably not. We'll just... No targets on this one. And then we just bash. So I would like to find a blue card to go with this Force of Will so that we can stop something like a crop rotation. We're hoping our opponent doesn't draw much in the way of action. I think they're probably thinking about cycling this Survive Triumph. Alright, they have an Orcish Bowmasters of their own. Sure, well we can reanimate our Bowmasters and Bowmasters their Bowmasters, and we've all seen this song and dance many times before. Okay, so they're playing the Savai Triumph. Interesting. Wonder what the black banner is for. Okay, so we could either ponder here, or we could just save this as a blue card for our Force of Will, and then nothing can really go wrong that way. I think that is a solid option. So let's reanimate this Bowmasters. Let's ping down their Bowmasters. This will grow our army, and then we can attack with 2 creatures. So we could ponder, but we'd be looking for a blue card, and the reanimated decks now have a lot fewer blue cards, because instead of being able to run 4 Psychic Frog, we now have things like Bowmasters in that slot, so the chance of us hitting a blue card aren't as high as they used to be, so I'd rather just keep this back, and this way we're not going to get Dark Depths out. Alright, opponent's had enough. Okay, what do we want for a matchup like this? Brazen Borrower, this bounces MircaleChen, so I would like to do that, please. Dauthi Voidwalker is reasonable here. Barrowgoyf is reasonable. All the removal spells are good. The Harbinger is an interesting one. It can shut down a bunch of their stuff, but it can also just give them a line to MircaleChen just off of a Dark Depths. But their deck is not about the MircaleChen. It's like a mid-range grindy deck that has a MircaleChen kill in. So I think I'm okay to have these in, especially if we got the Borrow in. If we're boarding in this many cards, I don't think we can afford to board in other stuff. But let's have a look. So Dazes don't feel great into our opponent's deck, certainly not on the play. Sorry, on the draw. Thoughtseizes are not great. I would rather be able to draw a removal spell. So if we end up in a situation where our opponent's done something and then we just top deck the Thoughtseize, that's not going to help. Like, this is obviously going to be great on turn 1, but the game isn't always about turn 1. So I'd rather have better things to ponder and cantrip into than have something that we kind of need to use early doors. We could trim back a little bit on Animate Deads and just have a couple of Barrowgoyfs, because this card is pretty chunky and can do some real work. I think this is fine, and we're going to send it like this. Like, we could board in the Dauthi Voidwalkers to stop their graveyard stuff, but pecking away for 3 isn't enough, really, and they don't necessarily need their graveyard, because they can just use the Reclaimer or the Reliquary to go and find something that ruins us, like, I don't know, Maze of Earth, or, you know, a massive 20/20 creature. So I think we're better off just playing like this. I don't like having the Force of Will that much in a fair matchup like this, but they do have an unfair lever they get to pull sometimes, and I'd rather have an option to interfere with, you know, like a crop rotation, making a 20/20, or once we've just got the game locked down, digging away with an Atraxa to find a Force of Will is pretty good too. This hand is interesting. We have removal. The Bowmasters isn't great. Maybe the Bowmasters should have become a Dauthi Voidwalker, but we were fetching on basics, so it's harder to cast the Dauthi. So this is already a mulligan because of the Atraxa, but it is a blue card that we can pitch to Force of Will later. You can always brainstorm back later on in the game. Do I feel okay playing this game on Fatal Push, Bowmasters, Wasteland, and Barrowgoyf for now? I think that is actually okay. I would like more removal, but we'll take it. It's harder to get these out of your hand now that we don't have Psychic Frog. A Troll of Khazad-dûm. Okay, well, everything has just changed quite a bit here. So if we need to do an emergency Fatal Push, we can, but we're probably just cycling this, reanimating it, and we got a big guy. They didn't do anything in step, so they didn't get a Surveil land like a Lush Portico or anything, which is a surprise. They didn't do anything with that fetch land. Maybe they're playing a little bit fearful of Daze, but then, not Daze, Stifle, but then they can't, but then they're just going to be playing into the next turn. This is for X equals 1, so it's going to be an Elvish Reclaimer. And we'll just crack this for, and then we're just going to get a basic, actually no, we're going to get Underground Sea here, and then we'll Fatal Push this. So we're not going to make a troll this turn, but we need to stop them from getting all their bits and pieces in a row here. So we could play this Wasteland. Not great into the flagstones, truth be told. We could just cycle this and get a Surveyor land. I quite like that as an option. I don't think we're going to get MircaleChen next turn, but we do have a Borrower just in case that does happen. So I think we're just going to get ourselves a Undercity Sewers. Now we should probably be playing around the Harbinger of the Seas for later on, but again, that's a problem for later. I think we need to play to what we have right now. I don't want this Troll in hand. I quite like the Troll. This gives us a little bit more mana to work with against the Wasteland deck. I will keep that on top. Obviously, putting in the graveyard just gives us another target in the graveyard. But considering our opponent is a Wasteland deck and they shoot at their Wastelands a whole bunch, I would rather have access to that. And we can go and fetch our basic swamp with it, which covers us from the Harbinger of the Seas plan. Paducah Bog. Okay. Well, we get to make a massive guy now. They might have an endurance. Be a 2-for-1 if they do. Alright, let's swamp cycle. Let's just animate dead this draw. So the other option we have there is to play the Wasteland and deploy the Barrowgoyf. But I think just getting this 5-5 into play right now makes a little bit more sense to me. Because they're going to have to do something to answer this. And then once they do, there's going to be more stuff in the graveyard. So now there's going to be an enchantment as well. So our Barrowgoyf is now a 5-6. So this is kind of like baiting out the removal a little bit. We're going to see here. Fable the Mirror Breaker. Sure. Don't see those all the time. Like a 4-color build. Wasteland. I think the play here is make the Goyf blow up a land. I don't think we need to blow up this Tiger. I'm trying to think what they could have that we actually care about. So the red is probably going to be for things like Pyroblast, but we don't care about Pyroblast right now, and I don't want it's going to get blown out by like double crop rotation to kill us. So I think we just hold this up because they can't make a MircaleChen while this is in play. Now we do have the MircaleChen covered to an extent, but I'd rather not have to deal with that in the first place. And then we can use our Borrower more aggressively. Because if we can connect with the Barrowgoyf, then we're going to get ourselves quite like another card if we're seeing 5 cards here. So they did bin off 2 cards. So that might mean they are looking for something. Sylvan Safekeeper. So this is going to make our MircaleChen answer in Brazen Borrower not so good. Echoing Deeps just as a colourless land. So it's going to be a Knight of the Reliquary. How big is this guy? It's a 4-4. Okay, so we can attack. Obviously, they can sacrifice a bunch of lands, but we have Death Touch. Wow, they really wanted this land, this treasure. This suggests to me they have a plow. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, our opponent is in a pretty solid position right now. So we can't really interact with this. All our interaction does is make them lose lands, but they have plenty of lands and a loam going. I think our opponent has turned the corner on this one a little bit. We obviously have a plan down the stretch. Let's have a think what we're doing here. Then we play out a Wasteland. That's a given. And then we can Bowmasters ping this. That will force a sacrifice. Is that even where we want to be doing? I think that's okay though. This obviously is going to pump the Knight. But what they can do here, if they sacrifice, we don't get a token. Yeah, okay, so it's going to sacrifice the flagstones. There is an argument to just ping their face and have the additional blocker here. Maybe that is a better line. What do we need to do? So we can disrupt our opponent's mana here before they get to untap with the Knight. But I don't think we need to do that. If they hold the Knight up, we're not getting attacked by it, and that gives us time to find a reanimation spell to go with our Entomb. They already have the Echoing Deeps and the Paducah box. They might not be able to wipe our graveyard from this point. Like, these are both probably singletons in their deck. But we do need to do something before this Reflection of Kiki-Jiki just absolutely mangles us. I think maybe we want to cut the Atraxa, perhaps. There's definitely an argument for cutting the Atraxa because of the Caracas. But we do have Wasteland, so we can handle that. Maybe we want the Dauthi Voidwalker, because our opponent seems to be a little bit more on loan than I was expecting. So the Green-White Depths decks have varying amounts of loams, and they lean into it in different ways. Our opponent's obviously a 4-color build, so they are a little bit more loam heavy than I was expecting. But, you know, that's fine. More information for game 3. We've got a lot of life to soak up damage with, but our opponent can deal some pretty big chunks of damage next turn when they start copying their Knight. They can also threaten MircaleChen very soon, and it's not something we get to really deal with. Harbinger of the Seas. Like, that obviously does some stuff here. Do we want to show our opponent we boarded that in? I think that's fine. Not a massive lover of this. Like, it's obviously going to shut down some of our opponent's stuff. What are they going to fetch here? A basic plains. They've got a treasure, so this isn't really going to cut them out of colours very much. It's just going to cut their utility lands off. They've got a Wasteland over there. They're going to Wasteland our Wasteland. No, they're going to Wasteland our Undercity Sewers. Okay. So this makes the loam a lot less effective. I think I should have boarded in the Dauthi Voidwalkers over the Bowmasters. Okay, so they've got a 6/6. So the reason we're leaving the Wastelands up here is if our opponent plays a Dark Depths and then kills our creature, they get 20/20, but we have 2 Wastelands to point it to stop that from happening. Because the Brazen Borrower is unlikely to bounce here. Alright, they got a Mox Diamond. So they got all the colours they require. I think they're just going to start turning their knight sideways. I don't think we beat the knight turning sideways here. Yep, so we're going to take 9 this turn. And they've got a knight back for blocks in terms of the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. We could try and bounce it, and if they try and save it, this is Shroud rather than Hexproof, so it would fizzle the ability. So we can at least stop that from happening. Metamorphosis Fanatic. Sure. No targets, unfortunately. We can't Entomb in response because we have no black mana here. We had to use a black mana for the Fanatic. But it's still a 4/4 lifelink, which is reasonable. I don't want to trade this for any of their guys, not really. So this is one of the reasons why holding the Entomb instead of just firing it off earlier is a little bit awkward. But they have lots of ability to manipulate our graveyard in terms of endurances and all sorts. Okay, so doing this at end step. I think we just scoop this one up. I don't think we need to keep playing this. We're going to get hit by like 3 7/7s this turn. Alright, so let's have these in instead of the Bowmasters. It makes our mana worse, which is awkward, but I think that's okay at the end. Do we need an explosives? I don't think so. What's our blue count like? Just to demonstrate the point I was mentioning earlier. 18. I don't think we can cut the Atraxa. Like, we still get the cards off it. Even though they bounced it with a Crackers, it's annoying, but we at least get a bunch of cards off of it. I don't think we can go lower than 18 blue cards and reliably have this Force of Will. We can always start trimming Force of Wills and just doing something else. But I think having the Force of Will, once we've managed to sort of get something down and just ride one of our guys to victory, is enough, because we don't need many turns, and these both offset the card loss from it. So it's more like a card we want to find once we're doing our thing than having it in our opener. What do we have here? We have a removal spell, we have a bounce spell, and we just have 2 Barrowgoyfs that are okay. We need to find another land. We can certainly do that using a Surveil land. Want to fatal push our opponent's creatures. Do we need to go towards a Reanimate line? I think this is fine. I would like a little bit more removal. We're not really finding our cantrips though today, which is unfortunate. So we can play on basics here. Or we can get a Surveil land. I'm quite content to just play this swamp out without cracking this first. And that way we can save our ability to do revolt stuff, and then we're not going to have to go and get a non-basic kick. So if we go and get an island, then we shut off the Dauthi Voidwalker. Okay. So now we can get the island without shutting off the Dauthi Voidwalker. Or we can get Surveil land and see if we can spike for this Reanimate. A Bayou. I think I'm going to get Surveil land here. I just remember, this is the exact sort of card I want in the matchup. Just kill all their guys, keep them dead. So they have white mana here, so I wouldn't be surprised if our opponent drops something like a Swords to Plowshares on us here. Just a lowly 1/2 is innocent. You don't need to kill this, it's fine. Then hopefully they'll play like a knight next turn and we can dismember it, and then we can just smash with a big guy. We get plowed. 2 mana. No? An Orcish Bowmasters. Okay. That's fine. Our opponent has a lot of different stuff in their deck. You know, they got Lone Plan, they got Bowmasters, they got Fable. Why are they pinging this? They should have gone to face for that one. Oh, okay. I see what they're doing. They're surgically extracting our Polluted Deltas to kill our Barrowgoyf. Intriguing. This isn't going to work the way they want it to, though. Because the surgical extraction will go to graveyard, and then state-based effects will be checked. And then there will be an instant in the graveyard. Not convinced that's the line they wanted to take. Powerful Goyf action there. It's like where you lightning bolt a Goyf and it grows, so it doesn't die. That's a pretty good exchange for us. They shaved a point of life and they discarded a card for no reason. Now, we are a bit shy of fetch land, so getting Revolt might prove more difficult. They also know we've got a bunch of removal in hand. Thespian Stage, okay. A Knight of the Reliquary, holding up a Mox Diamond. So we now have a 2-3. The way they fired off that Surgical Extraction kind of makes me think they might have a second one. Okay, so we're going to get a Plow here at end step. Well, no, they're just crop rotating right now. They're going to get a Bojuka Bog and Bojuka Bog their own graveyard to kill our... It doesn't kill our Barrowgoyf because they didn't attack and we didn't block. So I imagine we're getting something else here. Could just be the MircaleChen land. Talon Gates, they're going to... Oh, they're phasing out their guy. That's interesting. So what I want to do here... I could pop both of these and crack for a decent chunk of damage. I don't hate that. Killing this is going to be quite difficult though. I think we'll just attack here and hold up some stuff. The other option there was just to play another Barrowgoyf. This guy is back now. Critter. It's a 4-4, so Dismember is a really dodgy thing to use. Okay, so now we basically can't Dismember it. But we do get to do some other stuff if we want. So we can try to Dismember this. They will go and fetch a land. And then in response, we get to Fatal Push. Because what they're going to do is they're going to get Sajiri Step here. So we force the action using our Dismember here. Because this Dismember is not going to resolve. Or it's not going to work because they're going to go get Sajiri Step. And then we Fatal Push. It is a 2-for-1. Feels like they have a crop rotation we just lose here. But we'll let them get their thing and put something on the stack. A Wasteland. Let's try and kill this. Now we have Revolt. Bit of a weird stack. If the last card in the hand is the crop rotation, then we're in trouble. Okay, so now this is a fine position. Our opponent has nothing on board. We have a massive guy. We're a little bit shy of lands, but we can reanimate their guy if we want to, and it'll be a 4-4. Force of Will is an excellent pickup here. So if we reanimate this, that'll be a sorcery. So that'll grow our creature, right? Okay, so we'll do this pre-combat. This gets us more looks at another card. So this is exactly the situation I wanted the Force of Will for. So that we just had, you know, that little valve to make sure that we can just get around the corner with these creatures. Little safety valve of a Force of Will. Maybe we could have boarded down on them, just had 3. But again, the blue cards would be difficult. Life from the Loam. This doesn't matter. We're now a little bit punished for not getting a basic island earlier. But it doesn't feel like much of a punishment when we're beating them down for many damages. Sure, I'll take a Troll. Do I play out this Underground Sea so our opponent has to... So our opponent might Wasteland and have less mana to operate under? I think I do. I'm not expecting them to care about this too much. But we have 2 lethal threats. Right, yes, so they are. So now we just Swamp Cycle this. Do we have any more? We have 1 Underground Sea, sure. Now that I know that, I'm not going to play this out until we need to cast the Brazen Borrower. What have you got for us, opponent? An Orcish Bowmasters. I don't think we care enough about that one. Just let that go through. We'll eventually crush through that. They have to chump block both of our creatures. So we're probably countering like something that ruins our day entirely. Not even sure what that is at this point because we are absolutely cruising over here. Survive Triome Cycle. That's not where our opponent wants to be. This guy. Do we care about this guy? I don't think so. They get 1 turn to activate it. Right, they just scooped it up. Alright. Yeah. We sort of showed the slightly fairer plan here and how we can sort of board into that. We didn't really do the big reanimation stuff either. Still felt pretty good. Alright, let's go to round 2. So we've got a reasonable strategy here. We can Thoughtseize turn 1 and then cycle Reanimate Troll. That's pretty strong. I'll keep that. Mistress Bauble. Okay, so we're probably looking at a Delver style deck here. Lots of Baubling. So I get to draw a nice fresh selection of cards for us to then take away from them. So we have some interesting choices here. So if we play this Underground Sea to Thoughtseize, we can then use this to get an island next turn. And then we have this to get the swamp, so we can play on basics. I think that's fine. It does expose us to Wasteland this turn, so maybe we don't get the turn 2 Troll. But it means we do get to play on basics moving forward after this. Okay, so we're probably going to see a Brainstorm putting back some stuff. So we've seen the Animate Dead in our hand, because they saw it off of the baubles. So probably expecting more or less exactly what we're doing. Delver of Secrets, Murktide Regent. Honestly, I think the Delver is more problematic here than the Murktide. Although the Murktide comes down next turn, right? Not very big though. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess it is still bigger than a Delver. Alright, we'll get rid of the Murktide. I was like, oh, it's only turn 1. They can't have a Murktide on turn 2. I was like, actually, no, they can't have a Murktide on turn 2. It'll only be a 4-4, but that's still reasonable. Okay, so we've got Basic Island into Delver and another Delver. So we know what's in our opponent's hands. We can Bowmaster one of these down. That's probably better than doing the Troll here. So we're going to fetch our Basic Island here. Ping down one of the Delvers. Easy peasy. And now our opponent has just a bunch of lands in hand. Okay, a Lightning Bolt on top. So if they bolt our Bowmasters, it's not the end of the world for us. So we have perfect information of our opponent's hand, which is a place I love to be. So we can cycle a Troll and Animate Dead it and save our life total and not have to use... And then we can use the Reanimate later on a different guy. Or we could just ruin our opponent's day entirely. So we Swamp Cycle this for a basic Swamp. Just cast Entomb and Reanimate. I think we just go and get the Archon of Cruelty here. They can't beat that with their deck. Alright, our opponent's just scooping it up as soon as we tap one black mana there. Alright, we are in some sort of fairish Delver matchup. So they probably have 2 copies of the Grafdigger's Cage. That's something to be aware of. I would very much like to have removal. And I think we're probably boarding into some amount of our fair plan. So I think the Bowmasters are better than the Dauthi Voidwalker here. So we're probably going to keep this going. We don't really want to be doing Force of Will stuff against our opponent. Like we can, and like force stuff through. But it's not where we want to be. We want to just trade resources a little bit here. So I think we can trim on this. Do I want all of these Animate Deads? I'm not sure I do. I think I would trade one Animate Dead for a Brazen Borrower, just so we're sort of leaning into a fair plan a little bit. I don't know if I want the Dauthi Voidwalker, because they do just die to lightning bolts, but they are good at stopping some of their graveyard from... Do I want... Maybe I'll keep 3 Force of Wills in. Just to help us send it, or we can... Is that true? Force of Will is less likely to be a dead card than an Animate Dead. We want this Engineering Explosives. That's what we actually want here. Let's have that. Okay, that's a lot. Okay, so the Engineering Explosives can clean up their 1-drops. It can also blow up a Grafdigger's Cage and enable our Graveyard Shenanigans. Okay, well, there's certainly a plan forming with this hand. We can just send it, and if our opponent doesn't have anything, then we get to win. But we can just also fire Bowmasters at our opponent until they die. A Tamiyo. Pretty solid. So we could Wasteland here, let them accrue a clue. But I think what we're going to do, now that we've drawn a second Entomb, is... Oh, actually, we should probably fetch around a Stifle here. I'm not expecting Stifle. These decks haven't had Stifling for a little while now. But it would be embarrassing if we got killed by one, since we're fetching a Swamp anyway. Dragon's Rage Channeler. Let's go and get that Swamp. So the plan here is... We Entomb, they respond, we untap, we Bowmasters their Channeler. Wonder what we do if the Entomb resolves. I don't believe this is going to resolve though. We'll get some information as to what their hand looks like in terms of what they try and answer this with. Okay, it's a Daze. So it might still be a Force of Will over there. But if they Force of Will, they definitely don't have a Daze. So I get to pay for that one. Sure. So we got 3 card types in there. Is it... I think we are just firing off this Bowmasters. We have 2 of them. They got second Daze. This is very good. Force of Will, and at least we're getting a 2 for 1 here. But a matchup like this, the Bowmasters is almost as scary as some of the reanimation stuff we're doing. Alright, we could see something like a Brainstorm trying to surveil into a 4th type. But they have to do this before we put the trigger on the stack, because they might have a counterspell. Okay. Let's try and pin this down. So now they can respond. So they're going for... And lightning bolting our guy, sure. So this could end up giving them Delirium. Okay, it did not, but they left it on top. So we get to take their guy out and get a 1-1. Not amazing, but also not terrible. We could be looking at something like a Murktide Regent quite soon. If they're just going for like Brainstorm Flip Tamiyo, then we can work towards an Archon, because it's creature or Planeswalker they have to sacrifice. We can also use the Bowmasters to grow our Orc army so it actually gets damage in on a Tamiyo. So we've got some options. Okay, a Ponder. So this is the second card they're going to be drawing for the turn. They need one more to flip the Tamiyo. They won't be able to use a clue to do that because they don't have the mana available, but they could find another cantrip. They didn't shuffle. Right, we're seeing a Delver here. Okay, that's all right with me. 2 cards left in our opponent's hand. Engineered explosives, you say. Are very explosive. All right, so let's play this for 1. So even if they flip the Tamiyo response somehow, it still doesn't work. So we crack this now and we attack for 1, or we try and see the card on top, possibly risk something like a Stifle. I think we just crack this now and get our 1 damage in. Because 16 is an important... Actually, no, it's not that important, is it? I'm just trying to work out in terms of... So we have 6, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, no, it is important, actually. It's in terms of how our curve is set up. But this is what I mean about this deck's mana base. So they're wastelanding us, but it's not going to matter. Okay, so we can attack with this guy. I don't think we're going to do this right now. I think I want to ponder. Do I want to ponder first? I think I'm going to ponder first. There's an argument to shuffling and getting this land in case we want multiple cards from this ponder. Right, they are cracking a clue and we can't Bowmasters them. A Fatal Push is pretty nice here. We don't need the Reanimate. The Brainstorm is also nice. So put this on the bottom, then the Brainstorm, and then the Push. So I could cycle this and get a land right now, or I could hold up the Push, or I could Entomb at end step. I think we're in a fine position. I think we're just going to sit back, draw that nice little Brainstorm that's on top, and then we can Brainstorm and then use the Troll Shuffle. I'm not sure if our opponent has access to a Daze. They've had enough stuff in their hand since we last cast a spell. So I don't really want the Reanimates on top of our library. So if we Brainstorm... Yeah, I think that's fine. We'll Brainstorm and then Shuffle. Like, we could be trying to put this game away a little bit quicker. Okay, so we don't want this Reanimate. And... honestly, everything else here looks great. So I guess I'll put this Ponder back. And then I will cycle. I don't want the Sewers here. I think I'll just get the C, actually, because then we can potentially Entomb or Fatal Push. I know, there's so many different ways we could have played this game, and I think all of them are pretty solid. Right, we're not going to go into a Daze. We don't want like a turn 6 Daze to ruin our chances here. Let's cast this Entomb. I don't want an Archon of Cruelty. I think I just want an Atraxa here. Atraxa dies to Red Blast, actually. Okay, it's probably the Archon then. Let's go for this Archon then. Surgeon Extraction, sure. That's fine. Like, our hand is still great. They do get a 2 for 1 here, which is going to catch them up a little bit. So maybe the safe line there is just to do the Orcish Bowmasters stuff. I think we probably could have discerned they had some sort of graveyard related stuff if they're just playing lands out and not playing anything else. Like, what would they have in their hand? Yeah, I think that's on us, actually. We should have just played the Bowmasters. Because, like, what would our opponent have? They'd have Lightning Bolts, Graveyard Interaction, or Counter Spells. Those are the 3 things our opponent can have. I guess Bowmasters plays into 2 of those, and Entomb Reanimate plays into 2 of those. So our opponent has a Hardcast Force of Will available. Or at least it looks like that. What are we doing here? We can fire off these Orcish Bowmasters. This is just going to help us force for an additional point of damage this turn. And grow our little Orc army. So this guy on his own is going to be a 5-turn clock. So we can go and get Surveil Land now. I think if we draw another one of these, we're probably holding it to hardcast. Let's get a Surveil Land. Surveil. A Reanimate. Sure, I'll leave it on top. So we can Reanimate and try and get something out of our opponent. And then we can just drop the Barrowgoyf, which is bigger than the Troll right now. The Troll obviously is harder to block. But I think we're just in a pretty commanding position altogether. Sure, a Brainstorm. So we could have just held up the Bowmasters and made it so our opponent never wants to Brainstorm. But the problem is if they have the Bolt like they did, then they can just Brainstorm, and then when we play the guy, they can then just Bolt it. So it ends up the same way, except this way it's a little bit more proactive. We get some damage in. And now any of our big monsters are going to be a single hit. Right, then we just get the Troll in. It's harder for our opponent to deal with in red. Attack for 2. And I'll deploy the Barrowgoyf, and our opponent will probably scoop. So this is also around a Daze, which is nice for us. Okay, so we've got a removal spell. We've also got 3 chunky boys. Well, 2 chunky boys and 1 moderate-sized guy. Just a little grizzly bear. Right, they're bouncing our Troll, that's fine. The Brazen Borrower cannot block creatures that do not have flying, so they're going to need to find something else here. And Unholy Heat no longer kills our Barrowgoyf because it's a 6/7. So they need like another Borrower. I think you're probably supposed to Borrower the Barrowgoyf and then hope to Unholy Heat the Troll, or maybe counter the Barrowgoyf on the way back down, but we don't know what's in our opponent's hand. And then we got the match. So we are now 2-0. Let's go to round 3. Okay. This one certainly has a plan, doesn't it? We can keep this. So we cycle the Troll, turn 2, we reanimate, and then later on we can try and brainstorm this Archon of Cruelty somewhere. And I guess we could... Let me have a think about this. If we go and tutor for the Undercity Sewers in our hand, we can then next turn we can play the Undercity Sewers, trigger on a stack, brainstorm, and then we can put the Archon of Cruelty away. Then we have to wait one more turn before we can reanimate. I don't know, we'll see what information we get from our opponent, because we're not really doing anything until our turn 2, or end of their turn. Just play out the Misty Rainforest and pass, and then we can make some decisions as to what lands we're getting, and if we want to try go for the Archon plan, or if we're going for the Troll plan. But we do have a way of putting the Archon in the graveyard, but do we want to do that when our opponent might be playing a reanimation deck, and we put it into the graveyard? Arena of Glory. So this is probably Painter. So, intriguing. I think we will get an Underground Sea here. Do we get the Underground Sea? Or did we get the island? No, we get the Underground Sea here. Then I will Swamp Cycle and get the Undercity Sewers. And Animate Dead. So we can play this. Trigger on a stack, we can Brainstorm. So we want to mill off this Archon of Cruelty. I guess we're probably just putting back the Animate Dead. Anything else here is pretty reasonable. And then we'll surveil this creature into the graveyard. And then try and use this Daze to stop our opponent from doing anything too scary. But we don't really care if they play like a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. That's not an issue for us. Blood Moon is, so we would need to Daze a Blood Moon. Soul Guide Lantern with the mana to pay around it. Sure. That's pretty good. That is a singleton in our opponent's deck that they just happen to have. Now, sometimes that happens. We could have played this slower in Thoughtseize. There's definitely ways we could have approached this differently. And now our big reanimation target is Pyroblastable. Okay, I think we will cast a Thoughtseize, and then we can ponder knowing what we're looking for to deal with our opponent's bits and pieces. We're probably going to Brainstorm, though. Chaos Defiler. I like a Chaos Defiler because we can reanimate this. When Chaos Defiler dies for each opponent choose. Okay. Chaos Defiler is good. I will take this Chaos Defiler. Can we deal with this Painter? Because they get to Pyroblast a bunch of stuff next turn, though. That is awkward. Okay, I think we take the Painter for that reason. Like, we could have just reanimated the Defiler right now. Maybe that's slightly better. No, I just don't want them to get comboed. Don't want them to combo us out. I think the Painter is the correct take there. So we take the Defiler and bring it back right now. We're not actually blowing up anything meaningful. So this is going to get red blasted. Yeah, that's fine. Honestly, that's fine. I just don't want them to play like Lotus Petal and Defiler. We want this Defiler in the graveyard, and I think our opponent is going to oblige. They know we have a reanimation spell though, so they might be worried about doing that. There is the Fable. So they're still holding up the Red Blast. Our Daze is pretty rubbish at this point. I would like to cast a Swamp, cast this Ponder, please. Can we resolve this, or are you going to Pyroblast this? Is this your fight? Honestly, I think they should Pyroblast this. Obviously, we know that they should because this is our hand. Okay, so do I want to Daze this? I don't think this Daze is getting any better, is it? Let's just Daze this Pyroblast. You got Summon Spirit Guide? No. Okay. Force of Will is interesting. We don't really like Force of Will very much because of what we have in hand right now. I don't really like the Thoughtseize that much. Like, it's okay. I don't really want to draw through all these lands either. I want one of these cards, but we don't have the choice of only taking one. We have to take two of them. We can surveil one of them away, but we have to keep the other one. So the Thoughtseize means that we can access the Defiler if they don't play. The problem is now, though, they're going to just cast this Defiler off of this Goblin Shaman. So I guess we have to take the Thoughtseize. They can't do that. Which means I guess we bury them like this. Okay, so we Thoughtseize, take the Defiler, because they're going to have a treasure to cast it next turn. That leaves them with just an Ancient Tomb. And then we can surveil. We can either surveil something away, or we can just blow up their Fable right now. Kind of like blowing up their Fable. Right, I'll take that Defiler. So this is a choose. So nothing goes on the stack. Well, the ability goes on the stack, but they don't get to see what we're blowing up until it's gone. So Solgar Lantern only exiles opponents' graveyards. So we can fire off something like an Animate Dead on our Troll to make them crack the Solgar Lantern rather than drawing a card with it. But we know we're drawing... Okay, so they're just having to draw a card with it. So now we get to get our Troll as well. There's the Ancient Tomb we knew about. The One Ring. Oh no, Ensnaring Bridge. Oh no. Okay, so we have Brazen Borrower in our deck. We also have a Chaos Defiler. And if this dies, then we get to blow this up. Is it Destroy? It is Destroy, isn't it? So top card of our library is a Force of Will that we don't want. So I'm going to mill that over. And then I will still reanimate this Troll so that we have lethal damage when we pop this. Or we're more likely to have lethal damage when we pop this, because I suspect they're going to tap an Ancient Tomb at some point. What I'm most worried about from our opponent, though, is this Arena of Glory. I would like to find a Wasteland to stop that, because that just means that they get a hasty Goblin Engineer, which can shoot it for anything and put it straight into play. Which is not really where I want to be. I'm curious if they attack with the... Okay, they played out land. They could have held that and attacked to get a treasure. That gives them more artifacts. Okay, I think we just go and get the Atraxa here. This lets us dig towards Brazen Borrower. We have a couple of Borrowers, don't we? So, alright, I would very much like this Borrower. Oh, why is it going on small? I would like this Wasteland. I would like this Fatal Push. And then I guess we take an Animate Dead because it's there and we can. And a Reanimate because we can. So we could Wasteland here so they can't do a hasty Goblin. Or we could save it for an Urza Saga. We've got the Urza Saga beat here, so I think we just stop them getting a hasty Goblin. Because I don't know if they're going to have any other tricks. And then next turn we just Borrower, take out the Ensnaring Bridge, swing for 1,000,000 damage, and they die. Because this has Trample, so they're not going to be able to soak it all up. We're going to see a Pyroblast on our Atraxa. So Pyroblast is something that could jam us up a little bit, but we can just replay our Atraxa and dig to another Borrower. But what that could do is mean that we don't have quite enough damage to kill our opponent. Because there's only 10 between these two creatures, and they can block some of that. So maybe we're supposed to wait until we find some other interaction. I think we're just supposed to try and win the game here. I'm going to Pyroblast my Petty Theft. They are. Unfortunate for us. Okay, well, we still have more of that. Do we have a removal spell that kills our Defiler in our deck? I wonder. Am I playing out this Underground Sea, or is this Brainstorm food? I think it's Brainstorm food. Right, so we only have one Brazen Borrower, so we kind of need to protect the last Brazen Borrower when it goes off. Another Fatal Push. If only it could destroy Chaos Defilers. Our opponent might have to tap their Ancient Tombs at some point to get cards out of their hand, which would be good for us because that gives us the ability to be more likely to win in one swing. A Force of Will. This means I play out land so that we're getting closer to hardcast Force of Will. This is part of the puzzle to get through with our final Borrower. We do have two Borrowers. Let me just check the list. Yes, there is a second Borrower. Alright, we are okay. We've got to find it. A Grindstone. Understood. I kind of wish that we had Animate Deaded the Chaos Defiler. Because then it'd be easier to bounce and reset. Obviously, if we're bouncing, we're fine anyway. Okay, so there is the Borrower. We just need to make sure we have enough mana so that we get to do everything we need to here. Do I need to bring back this? I don't think I do. Right, we just pass, holding up these Fatal Pushes. Okay, this is the blue card for our Force of Will. But we also have a bunch of cards we're not using at the moment. I think I'm going to Brainstorm first. Because we're just trying to find as much interaction as we can. Like a Thoughtseize would be excellent. I like having access to this. So we don't need a Reanimate here. We don't need this Animate Dead either. I will deploy. I want our opponent to try and tap out and do something. Alright, they're just going to Grindstone us. We don't want the cards on top of our library, so... Wow, they milled loads of stuff. Okay. They're just going for the manual milling over there. Shady Traders, 3 cards in hand. How many Pyroblasts are we down? 1, 2, 3 Pyroblasts down. Are we drawing more cards looking for more forces? How many forces do we have in our deck? 2 more forces out of 24 cards. Do I like those odds? We also need to find the blue cards to go with them. How many red blasts does our opponent have? Am I okay with just 1 force of will here? The likelihood of us finding another one is relatively low, though. Okay, we're gonna petty theft this and hope that the force of will in our hand is enough. All right, this is the exchange you're expecting to happen. So they have another one. They do not. Okay, we don't need to push this guy, do we? Because they're taking 11, and then the trample from this is enough. I'm worried. What have you got? Lightning bolt on this guy. Okay. You're still gonna die to trample damage. Okay. We will go to the sideboard. Got a little bit dicey at times there. So Consign to Memory looks pretty solid here. Engine Explosives is pretty reasonable. The Dauthi Voidwalkers are better than the Bowmasters here. I like more removals. Just bring that all in. Go for the Throat is non-artifact creature. So it can blow up some of their guys, but not all of their guys. But I still think it's worth having. I don't like the Bowmasters. I don't know if our opponent's running Welder, but a lot of lists aren't. I don't think Welder's great right now, so that makes sense. Daze is pretty bad against our opponent's deck in general, as are the forces. So that's a pretty clean swap. Do I want to do anything differently? Do I want some Barrowgoyfs? They're just pretty large and tasty, aren't they? What would we be subbing out? Maybe a couple of Animate Deads just for a Barrowgoyf. A couple of Barrowgoyfs. Yeah. So there was an argument to bring in the Harbinger of the Seas, because Harbinger of the Seas shuts down the Urza Sagas, but we're kind of trying to use the Wastelands to do that. That's the plan here. I don't think we want to board in the Harbingers for that. Alright, that'll do. I like a Thoughtseize. And I do like a Wasteland to deal with a thing, and the Brainstorm can kind of do everything else. So I'm going to keep this one. Agatha's Soul Cauldron. That's pretty good against our Entomb, so we'll be Brainstorming that back, most likely. So just, I think we actually do want a Thoughtseize here. This is annoying for our Brainstorm, but we'll find another fetch at some point. Like, our opponent might have something like a Fable that is really hard to interact with once it's resolved. Boom, there's the Fable that's really hard to interact with once it's resolved. Excellent. So trading 1-for-1 with it is always great. Yep, you can keep eating my stuff. So they're keeping our Barrowgoyfs down, they're keeping our Murktides down, that sort of jazz. There's a mountain. So I could just take them off of this Ancient Tomb, but do I care about the Ancient Tomb? Or do I care about an Urza Saga? I could just put them down to 1 land with a Red Blast in hand. I think that's reasonable to do here. This is definitely a choice. Like, because we don't have answers to stuff in hand right now, just stopping them being able to play stuff is the line I want to take, I think, here, instead of holding up in case they draw a Urza Saga and answering that. I mean, it's... Okay, we didn't get immediately punished, but they did find a play here. Okay, so they no longer have the Red Blast for our Brainstorm. What are they going to put in the graveyard? Dragon Engine, most likely. Just get that well in. Or they could go for the Devourer, and then that gives us 1 turn to try and answer this Engineer. Yeah, that's what they're going for. Okay, so I could Entomb just to get a card out of my deck. I don't think I want to do that. I'd rather have more cards to Brainstorm back with. Okay, Fatal Push or Dismember is what we're looking for here. So let's get our Brainstorm on. We did board in more removal. None of that looks like removal to me, though. So we'll put back this Entomb and this Troll. And now we don't get to cast anything else. We need to hope our opponent doesn't play, just go for it into our Fatal Push. But if they do, at least we get to see how they've sideboarded. Alright, looks like they're going for it here. So we're just going to have a look and see how they've sideboarded here. The use of the Wasteland did not matter here. Right. I think given how little they have going on and the fact they've got a Red Blast for any weird blue shenanigans we throw. Oh wow, they didn't do it. You have to do it in the block stage. That's interesting. I thought they were going to go for it here. And the way they're pausing now makes me think that they were planning on going for it as well, and they just misclicked through it. I've certainly done that enough times myself. Yeah, our opponent said misclick there. So what are we doing? Are we brainstorming? I think we are brainstorming. There's a Red Blast. Yep. And then the Ponder sees 4 cards, so this is a better one to play second. So we'll shuffle. Right, I don't think our opponent's going to misclick a second time. None of these. A Reanimate. There's no creatures in the graveyard. I'll concede now. Like our opponent said, they misclicked, and I don't think they're going to misclick again. Okay, back to sideboard. Do I want to do anything differently? Not really. I think what we've got here is pretty strong. Like, there's arguably another Borrower is the only thing that I might be interested in. Again, I don't want to have too many blue spells. We're basically a black deck post board. Maybe you want to cool it on some of the reanimation stuff. Maybe we'll get rid of an Entomb. So that gives us 3 Entombs. Do we need this Atraxa in that case? Like, how many of these sorts of effects have we got over here? Like, what is our reanimation package looking like? I don't really like boarding out the reanimation package because it does just steal games. 3 Entombs. Alright, we'll try this. Like, Entomb is still a shuffle. It's not the worst thing. It's not great when it's just a shuffle, but... okay, we have a pretty solid line here. I will keep this. We can also answer some of the graveyard hate as well. And if our opponent doesn't do anything, we can just go on turn 2 with an Archon. And that's going to be very difficult for them to answer. But if they play a Soul Ray Lantern, we can play out the explosives and slowly get to where we need to be. We've got the Dauthi Voidwalker to stop them doing their stuff. Pretty happy with this. Mountain, you say? Just Entomb. Let's get the Archon of Cruelty. I think we can even afford to get the basic island here. If they've got... I don't think they're going to have other graveyard hate. If they've got Soul Ray Lantern and they've got the Cauldron. What was this pause? Alright, there we are in. Okay. Puts our opponent to 17, and then we hit them twice and put them to 1. So, we are doing well. We have to watch with our explosives that we don't blow up our own Animate Dead. We also can't explosives for 3, unless our opponent plays a Blood Moon. But we do have 3 Borrowers to deal with the Ensnaring Bridge. Opponent's taking a bit of time working out what to discard to this Archon. They discarded the Ensnaring Bridge. Not a fan of that one. Next time we can play out a Dauthi Voidwalker. An Urza's Saga. Sure. They're going to play an Engineer. They're going to play a Painted Servant that will die to our attack. So they might have Summon Spirit Guide plus Red Blast here. And that's pretty solid. Yep, Summon Spirit Guide, Red Blast. Means that if we draw another reanimation spell, we can send it again. So we could do that, or we could try and brainstorm for some... Or we could brainstorm to try and do that, sorry. Or we could just naturally draw it like a boss. That's also good. I think I would like to have access to a Surveil land here. This is what I mean about the reanimation strategy. Sometimes you just steal games. Oh, they got a Pyroblast here, have they? Oh, that's very good. I think we're probably just Surveil landing with this. So we're not going to do anything right now. Another Saga. So this is going to pop next turn and cause us some issues. And they're also going to be beaten down with some fair creatures. Now we can certainly beat the fair creatures. Right, Surveil land. Try and find some of that their removal. Everyone's got 1 card in hand. Is it another Red Blast? Go for the Throat. Destroy target non-artifact creature. I guess we put that in the graveyard. So we can... Oh wow, we can just... If our opponent has a Red Blast, we probably lose. And that's fine. I think we play this out. We play the explosives on 0. And then we reanimate the Archon. The reason we do this is if they make a token, they don't have to... That won't be the thing that they sacrifice. They'll sacrifice the Painter here. Because we want to get the Archon out now. Because we might not have it next turn if they go that route. I think this is the best way. Because this puts us with a win condition. And our opponent has their win condition knocked away from them. So we let this resolve. And then we blow this up. And it takes out the construct. And then when the Archon comes back in, they lose their Painter. Pretty slick, I thought. And Entomb. We don't really want the Entomb. We're already kind of doing that sort of stuff. We don't have anything that we can brainstorm into that matters here, so we're just going to leave it up. But our opponent is living off the top. They can make constructs, but they are useless into this giant, massive monster. What a card. What a ridiculous, massive yacht. I don't believe they're going to have any random Urza Saga stuff that can deal with our Archon, but they might be able to deal with future graveyard stuff we've got going on. Right, they're just making constructs. So this will die every time we attack. I wonder if they need this for metalcraft purposes, or they have some other reason for having it in play. Like they want to play a land into a welder or something, so they need to have a creature to sacrifice. A grindstone. Okay. Atraxa's not really the one we're after, is it? Okay, we're going to attack first. We have more cards, because then we have more cards to brainstorm back. So they can get, like, a piece of fast mana off of their Urza Saga, perhaps. So maybe if they've got LEDs in their list, they can just play a painter and LED us. So we're not completely out of the woods yet. Obviously, I feel pretty happy with how this game is going, but it can still slip away from us. Right, let's brainstorm. A Fatal Push. That's what we want. We also want this Wasteland, so we put back the Atraxa. And the Entomb is fine here. So we'll play out this Wasteland. We will make this guy. We'll take out the Urza Saga. This goes into our void zone that we get to replay. I don't think that's going to matter, but we may as well. We could wait till they untap. Archon is such a stupid card. Alright, so we are 3-0. Let's go to round 4. This hand is definitely a mulligan, so we can send this one back. Okay, we got Pondering. We've got some Reanimate that we might be able to work towards. So we've got something that we're pondering towards ourselves. What are we putting back here is the question. If we put back the Brainstorm, then we don't have the blue card. So we're obviously keeping the land. Do we want to keep some action against something spooky our opponent has? Maybe we do. So we can either get rid of the Reanimate, but then we don't have a plan, or we could get rid of the Wasteland. I think it's the Wasteland or the Push, I think, here. Because this is a nice catch-all piece of interaction, which means we need to keep another blue card. So these are kind of locked in, these 3 blue cards in my mind. And then it's one of these 3 cards. So this is either our second mana source that isn't really a mana source most of the time, a piece of removal, which is sometimes going to be good, but sometimes not, or Reanimate, which is kind of our game plan that we're working towards anyway. So, yeah, I think it's the Wasteland. Let's ponder. We're looking for another land, and an Entomb is great as well. Perfect. The game plan came together for us. Now, it might not work. We don't know what our opponent's up to yet. A Mox Diamond. Okay. We're getting Wastelanded this turn. Maze of Ith. We're going to get Loamed. Exploration. I think our Force of Will is being saved for something like a Crop Rotation. Or a Sphere of Resistance. That will do too. I think we have to fetch another non-basic here. I think we're going to get the Atraxa since we're a little bit low on resources. With the intention of trying to send an Archon in a bit. Okay, so there's 1 enchantment. That's easy. There's 2 lands. I think the Wasteland is pretty good here, actually. I like the Entomb more than a Daze. Okay, our creature... Oh, why has it gone small again? The creature is going to be the Borrower. Sorcerer, we only have 1 option here. And is it the Wasteland to take out something like a Port or a Maze? I think so. Okay, not bad. We're a little bit shields down if our opponent's got something like a Crop Rotation that they want to leverage right now. But we have the ability to put an Archon into play next turn, if we want to. Which is something that gets around Maze of Ith as well as our Wasteland stopping Maze of Ith. Expedition Map. Okay. Cracking the map. What are they going to find? Caracas. Caracas pretty good here. Obviously, we're just going to send the Archon. But because we went for the Atraxa first, we now can also send the Archon. And it's just pretty good for us. And then we can Wasteland something spooky further down the line. Considering they're a green-white build, they might also have other colours in there too, but they've shown us green and white, so I'm 100% sure they're going to have a Caracas in their main deck. Whether or not that's what they want to get here, I don't know. Maybe they've got something that works better for them. But we'll find out. There's the Caracas. Goodbye, Atraxa. You already did your job, though. 1 card left in our opponent's hand. If it's Crop Rotation, that's going to... Oh, no! That is our mistake. We could have Crop Rotated... sorry, we could have Entombed instead of drawing this. So now what we have to do is we have to Thoughtseize ourselves to get this card into our graveyard. So this is 8. Oh, sorry, no, we're Animate Deading it. Actually, it's fine, isn't it? Yeah, we could have avoided this by doing our Entomb in our upkeep. That was just a little bit loose on my part there. Right, we're in with a massive yacht. We discarded an Exploration. So they're living off the top here. They're going to get a Surveil land in the end step. A Life from Loam is irritating because we can't really permanently answer this Maze of Ith. So we'd just be doing 3 damage a turn instead, which is, you know, reasonable, but it's not ideal. Okay, they didn't want the crop rotation. Interesting. What do they want if they don't want a crop rotation? Because that is any land. And their deck is built around getting specific lands into play. Why do they not want that crop rotation? That's interesting. They didn't see us pick up a Force of Will or anything. That's an odd one. Alright, Dauthi Voidwalker in, Bowmasters out. That's step 1. The exploration tells me that our opponent is on a full-on lands build. So, explosives is reasonable here. The Harbingers are good. The Borrower's good. The Consigns are okay. We've seen Sphere Resistance, so I'm inclined to have these. I do not want Dazes. We can trim back on the Animate Deads here. I don't think we need the Fatal Pushes. I don't really like the Thoughtseizes either. Like, the Thoughtseizes are fine. I don't like Force of Will very much either, to be honest. But I don't mind countering a Life from the Loam. Sorry, not Life from the Loam, a crop rotation. I don't think we want Atraxa here either. So what's that? So we have we've removed too many cards. We can actually put some stuff back in now. So I think we'll have a Force of Will back in. Do you want some Thoughtseizes? Have a couple of Barrowgoyfs. I like those. We've been boarding them in a lot post-board, actually. Do we want a Thoughtseize here? I don't like the Daze at all. We could... I don't really like the Bowmasters either. It's only good against Sylvan Library, that's it. Do I want just a little bit of removal in case they've got some sort of other creatures going on? Maybe being able to hit like a clutch moment and stop the... As a Saga is better than a Thoughtseize. I think it probably is. So bring those back in. Like, Atraxa is fine here, but they will always have access to Karakas. So I don't think we want that in. This is a no-go. We have no starting mana. Obviously, we are playing a deck that has quite a low land count, so that is going to happen sometimes. Back-to-back hands, a little bit less likely. 3 hands in a row, very, very unlikely. Okay, this is what we're stuck with. So, we've got some lands. We've got a creature we can play. We keep this. We cannot afford card disadvantage or something like a Force of Will. Do I want to... I could keep a Troll instead of a land. So we could get rid of like the Ponder and a land. Yeah. Well, on this few cards, we kind of have to chance it and hope we don't just get Wasteland, like get our face Wastelanded off. Well. If it isn't a Wasteland our face off. Okay. So the plan is get a swamp. Go and find another swamp. Unfortunately, that one will be basic. We play out the Dauthi Voidwalker and hope that our opponent is just trying to leverage Life from Below in this game. So this has to get the... Oh, this can't get a swamp, can it? It has to get a non-basic. I think that means we're just drawing a card. Oh, we're not a fan of this one. Let's crack this. So this has to get us an Underground Sea. Let me get a swamp. Let me deploy the swamp. And then we can go and get an Underground Sea next turn. Yeah, that being... Because if we go and fetch at Ender's turn, they could just Wasteland it. Whereas the line we took meant that we could just maybe draw into a land and just deploy the Voidwalker. We do get to deploy the Voidwalker next turn, but our opponent almost certainly has some plows in their deck because they're running the green-white variant, which I think is the best version of lands right now. An Exploration, so that must have been what they drew this turn. Otherwise, we would have played out the previous turn. A Presagio and a Wasteland. All the friends are here together. Alone. Okay. Swamp Cycle. We go and get this Underground Sea. Play this Underground Sea. Play this Dauthi Voidwalker. I think that is better than the Troll, given our opponent's plan is going to be Life from Below centric. So if they dredge the Life from Below, there won't be any lands back, but they can still keep rebuying these 2 Wastelands. Well, they can fire off 2 Wastelands still, because they've got 1 in hand and 1 in play. If they have an answer for our Dauthi Voidwalker, there it is. Okay, so now they're going to dredge in the draw step, I suspect, since they did that in the upkeep. Yep, and there's 3 lands. We have the ability to make an island here. That means we can't play Dauthi Voidwalker. Also, if we animate dead a troll, they just Presagio it, right? You know, they target a Presagio in their graveyard, so there's no point trying to animate dead something here. Okay, I'm not feeling good about this one anymore. Let's try and jam this little Dauthi Voidwalker. Have you got another plow? They're obviously cracking this so they have just more stuff in their graveyard and they're getting their Surveil going. Because Dauthi Voidwalker doesn't take stuff out of graveyard, it just stops stuff going into graveyards. Okay, they left the card on top, so that's probably pretty bad news for us. So I expect they draw a card this turn, maybe they plow our guy, or they just go on their merry way and kill us with something. Free Strider Lookout, love this guy. Really cool card. Okay, so we definitely want the removal spells in now. So they're committing a crime. If you haven't seen this guy before, it just digs you 5 cards whenever you target them. It's only once per turn, but whenever you commit a crime, which their deck does a lot due to Wastelands and stuff. And Ghost Quarter is obviously very good at doing that too. We are winning the race for now. So that's the thing we have going for us. So play their other Boseiju, we can maybe force something. Let's just see what's in the exile zone. It's just a Wasteland, that's not important. Let's just keep attacking. So ideally the plan is we draw another land, we play a Brazen Borrower. We could Animate Dead on a Troll and force them to Bojuka Bog it. That obviously doesn't feel great when we could Animate Dead something that has a trigger like an Archon or a... Oh, the Atraxa's gone actually, but we could go and get the Archon to actually take their guy out. And if we're just paying 2 mana for like a weird Lightning Helix that also kills their guy, that's fine. Whereas if we're basically just using it as a weird rampant growth that doesn't actually work very well because of their Wastelands, that doesn't seem like where I want to be. They've given us an interesting line here. Okay. We can now deploy the Brazen Borrower because of their Ghost Quarter. So they do have a reach creature, but if they aren't attacking with it, then we are attacking with our Dauthi Voidwalker and winning that race. Expedition map. What fresh horror is this going to be? Is this going to be Tabernacle? And then they can just Ghost Quarter us out. Oh, the Ghost Quarter is in the exile zones. They can't fully Ghost Quarter us out. But they could make us sacrifice one of our guys. Field of the Dead. Well, that's a bit of a pain. I would very much like to draw a Wasteland, I guess. Cantrip into Wasteland also fine. Goodbye, land. So they also get to commit a crime and get a guy. Yeah, that deck is sweet. This gets us a Surveil land. Would I trade my Borrower for their Free Strider Lookout at this point? We could also just get the Wasteland this. But then they just Boseiju our Animate Dead, so we never get to exile this permanently. It doesn't really work. So I guess we're just doing this. I think maybe we're supposed to attack with a Borrower there. It's not blocking. I don't think we're winning this game. Right, so we've got another win condition. They also have a Maze of Ith. Alright, I think I'm going to scoot this one up now. I think they've got enough stuff that I don't want to mess with this anymore. Let's just see if... Yeah, that was a good use of our time to scoot that one up. Okay, so now we know they've got something a bit spookier in that little guy. Go for the Throat doesn't kill artifact creature. I think I want this Dismember. How much do I like the consigns here? They're okay. I'm going to take out Force. I really don't like Force in this matchup. They kind of feel like, again, if we can just get our thing and hold off for a couple of turns, that's all we need to do. Now, we did mulligan a lot in the previous game. This is a turn 2 Troll of Khazad-dûm into turn 3 Barrowgoyf. I'll keep this. So we can play on basics here. We'll just go get Island. This does expose us to the one of Ghost Quarter that our opponent has access to. But, you know, that's a problem for later. So we get basic Island here. We Swamp Cycle our Troll for a basic Swamp. Just the smoothest of mana bases right there. Let's go and make a Troll and try and beat down with it. Next turn we add more pressure. Our mana base is a little bit difficult for our opponent to interact with. So that's something. We also have the land for the Fatal Push to revolt it. Alright, they're ploughing our guy. We have a choice. We can either take out this Urza Saga and just stop that. Or we can get a threat in play. I'm not keen on this Urza Saga. I think we just need to deal with the Saga first. Now, if they have a Life from the Loam, this obviously ruins us. We have the option of taking out the Lush Portico, and maybe that works as well. And stops them getting stuff out of their Saga, but then they do get an Expedition map down the line if we leave it like that. And they've got some pretty horrible lands that I don't really want to see. A Wasteland from our opponent, that's not going to do anything. That's good news for us. Well, it will do something. It will interact with what we get out of this, but we'd have already got the mana out of it. An Entomb. So we could Entomb Reanimate here. I like that quite a lot. Let's crack this. We go and get ourselves the Underground Sea. Let's cast the Entomb here. This wins the game the quickest. So that's why I'm going for this line. Does get blown out by some graveyard stuff. Containment Priest. I don't have any black mana. Was not expecting the Containment Priest, and this is going to blow me out in a pretty big way. Okay. Very nice. Our opponent is a very competent magician, so I would expect them to have a good number of reps and a nice strategy into the deck we're playing. Okay, so we're going to take 2 damage here. We're going to lose an Underground Sea. They have the Loam. Okay, so now casting the Barrowgoyf is a pain, whereas if we'd have cast the Barrowgoyf last time, we might have been alright. Entomb isn't where I want to be here. We're doing this, and I would very much like to keep this land on top. And the plan is to hopefully see them equip this Shadow Spear, and then we get to take this out. But yeah, I think the Containment Priest blowout is probably going to be enough to win this game for them. It's very strong. Okay, we will just push this guy. This is where they just play the Free Strider Lookout, and then we are in some other different sorts of trouble. Alright, so we know we've got a land on top. Our opponent's gone down to very few resources there. That's a very good resource to have. Okay. Can our one creature go all the way? That is pretty much what we're looking at here. Now, it's a very fine creature. It's also quite large. Oh, I don't think our creature's going to go all the way. Let's see what our opponent does this turn. Animate Dead lines are off. We don't have anything good to reanimate anymore because the Archon's exiled. If they miss on a land drop, I think we're okay. I think they do have a land drop and they're just deciding which one, though. I don't think our opponent would just play out the Naked Saga like that if they didn't have a follow-up land. Maybe they're deciding if they want to Wasteland us. If they don't Wasteland us and we draw a Harbinger of the Seas, then that's pretty solid. So that's probably what they're considering. There's the Wasteland. They're going to take out... Yeah, okay, they don't want us doing Harbinger of the Seas, which is basically our final reanimation target in our deck. Do we have any creatures, do we? Obviously, I'm still going to put this creature into play because, you know, it's the best thing we have going on here. If they didn't Wasteland, we could have put in a Harbinger of the Seas here because we could have Entombed in response to casting it. But we've got a creature. It's a reasonable creature. Our opponent doesn't have any creatures. But they're putting up a pretty good fight over there. I think they are in a much more comfortable position than we are. Like, they probably go get the Expedition map here. They can crack it. Okay, they got a Ghost Vacuum. So this Entomb is completely off. Understood. Okay, so they've got another Saga. Okay, a 3/3, and we have a 4/4. So the Ghost Vacuum plus the Free Strider Lookout is very strong. Because this means every turn they get to exile something and get a land. It's a really cool little engine they have running there. I will cast this Brainstorm first. I will keep this Dismember, obviously. I don't believe our opponent is going to try and block here. But if they do, then we can kind of take that block. So in our end step, they're going to activate this, and then we're going to kill their guy. So taking out our enchantment. That's interesting. I guess it doesn't really matter here. It means that they can then take out their own Urza Sagas with Life from the Loam and shrink our Barrowgoyfs marginally. So I think we have a plan that involves reanimating their Free Strider Lookout. That's probably not going to be very good here, though, because of the Ghost Vacuum. I don't think they're going to preemptively go for it. Okay, they have a Maze of Ith now, so we need to find a Wasteland. Let's try. We know one of the cards, but we've got two. Okay, I guess we're putting these two back, and then we can shuffle with the Troll. Yep, Maze of Ith, not a surprise. What are their chances of winning this game? So they're going to make a guy... I don't think we can win this one. I think it's not worth our time or our opponents to keep playing this one out. They've got through the hard part now, and they just need to leverage all these resources in front of them. I think they're going to get there. So our play here is to cycle this end step, and then next turn we have like a Borrower, and then maybe we do little chip shots at 3, but then our opponent's already doing more damage to us via the Saga, which is going to be life linked up. So it's just not working for us on that one. All right, 4 rounds down. We are 3-1, but the 4-1 is still live, so let's go to the final round and see if we can put it on the board. Okay, we've got a little stopgap measure to stop anything spooky our opponent has in terms of this Force of Will. We can Thoughtseize our opponent as well. I think this is fine. We're on the draw, so we might hit a land, which makes things a little bit smoother because we are probably getting a basic swamp for turn 1 so that we can Thoughtseize and not get Wastelanded. And then we're going to be cycling the trolls to get our Underground Seas. But once again, we are demonstrating the power of the mana base of this deck. A basic island and a Tamiyo. I don't think we care about the Tamiyo. I think that's where our fight lies. We're going to do something pretty big that goes over the top eventually. And we are getting the swamp though. Let's just see what our opponent is working with. They can't Brainstorm to protect themselves. Prismatic Ending and Swords to Plowshares. I think the Swords to Plowshares is the obvious one that is the issue for us here. Okay, so our opponent could be like Blue-White Stiflenor. They could be some sort of control list. It's hard to tell just yet. So they're probably just going to be cracking clues and leveraging the Tamiyo that way. So I'm not going to cycle in the upkeep. I would like to see what we draw first and then make some decisions. Because we can Brainstorm potentially and then shuffle if we draw a land. A Reanimate. Okay, I will cycle this for an Underground Sea. I will deploy the Underground Sea and I believe I'm going to cast a Ponder this turn. Metamorphosis Fanatic. We don't want that just yet, do we? Because we need a third land. We can just send it next turn anyway. So this gives us another wave if something happens to our first wave. Like if they counter explicitly the Entomb, this works for us. Alright. Although we do have a Force of Will, so it seems quite likely. But we can always Entomb in our upkeep. If they counter the Entomb, then we have another Entomb ready to go. If they don't, then we get the shuffle and we don't have to worry about these other cards that we didn't want anyway. Flooded Strand. I think we're going to get the Archon of Cruelty here. Cracking Clue. Because the Archon of Cruelty will make them sacrifice a Tamiyo if they have anything to do with it. They've got a lot of cards over there now though. Let's cast in 2 in our upkeep and see if our opponent wants to respond. They do not. We are playing into Daze this way, but we have the force if we want to. I think we can probably just cycle this troll first. We're playing into Daze anyway. Might as well get something useful going. I will force this through. I feel pretty horrible to force into a Daze, but alright, we don't have to force. Our opponent just loses their stuff. Very nice. No Consign to Memory trigger. Alright, we're just in with our big friend. Now they could plow this. I think I would fight over that because this is obviously a very powerful game object to have around. It's going to be a Meticulous Archive to Surveil, or do they have the end of turn plow? Nope, no Surveil land, just an island. Interesting. They're going to go for something like a Back to Basics and then try and freeze us out. A Narset, Parter of Veils. This is going to dig for removal spells, so I think we hit this. Now, if this is just bait for a plow, that is annoying, but that represents multiple cards and can do some real work. Okay, they've let us untap, so I don't believe they're going to plow us now. Let's get another card, because then we can have a better idea what we're brainstorming or pondering for. We're more certainly just brainstorming and pondering for answers to anything our opponent has. Let's cast this Brainstorm. Okay, I don't think we want to troll. We could put the Animate Dead into play, but I don't think that's necessary. I guess I'll float this Fatal Push on top. And we'll just hold up this Bowmasters so when they try and cantrip their way to success. And then they'll have a target for their Prismatic Ending, but that's not really going to help them. Meticulous Archive. Alright. What do we want to board in for some sort of blue-white control-y type shenanigans? Probably just a higher density of threats is what we want here. We know our opponent's got the Tamiyo. We don't really know anything about the rest of their creature base. It did just look like they were going to be doing sort of blue-white, fair-looking control. Maybe they've got Daze Undoing in there. So we just board in some more threats. That makes sense to me. And then what comes out here? Daze is something they're probably going to play around quite easily. I don't mind having the Force of Wills. Once we do our busted thing, we can then protect it. We probably want to trim a little bit of our graveyard stuff just in case our opponent is messing with us on that front. And then that gives us one more card to trim. Tough call. What's our blue count looking like here? 15. 16 including this. That is not really enough for the old Force of Will, is it? It's like pretty sketchy amount. Okay, we'll take one of them out. So the idea is the Force of Wills are basically just a thing that we get off of Atraxa is what we're hoping here. Obviously we can have hands that look like this, which is just unkeepable. But if there was a land, we could probably keep this one. I wonder if our opponent's running something like Rest in Peace. That seems pretty solid at the moment. Okay, we have some threats. What are we going to get rid of here? It's probably just the Reanimate and just windmill in with fair creatures and force our opponent to remove them. I think our opponent has back to basics in their list. Look at the amount of basics they have. So I am inclined to fetch a basic swamp off of this Polluted Delta rather than a Surveil land. Does make our little trolls a bit worse, but that's fine. Mystic Sanctuary Chapped. Graph Digger's Cage. We don't care about Graph Digger's Cage because we're not on that plan. Like, we do have that still in our deck as a thing we can do. But it's not really what I'm aiming for right now. So we'll get our swamp out here. And I will deploy this Dauthi Voidwalker, I think. Having this one down first means that any spells go underneath it. If they try and counter like our follow-ups, like our Borrowers and things. Sorry, not our Borrowers, our Bowmasters. Like, Dauthi Voidwalker, not particularly good against our opponent's deck. It is just there as a threat. Force of Will, pitching Force of Will. Our opponent has gone down very low on resources there. They probably suspect that we don't have much in the way of action going on. But they would be quite wrong. I think I would rather get the Barrowgoyf down than the Bowmasters here, because the Barrowgoyf can threaten a Tamiyo a lot better than a Bowmasters can. Our opponent's got 3 cards in hand. Red source. Okay, so they are full Jeskai. Understood. Am I expecting Daze? No, I'm not. I'm just going to jam a big Barrowgoyf. It's not massive, but it's pretty reasonable sized. And then next turn we can start throwing down these Borrowers. Sorry, why do I keep calling them Borrowers? Bowmasters. 3 mana, Narset. Sure. Reveal your secrets to me. They don't have any white mana at the moment, which is certainly good news for us. Supreme Verdict. They are very far away from casting this, though. Unless they drop a planes right now. And if they have a non-basic planes, we can just waste it. An Archon of Cruelty. Not the one we want right now, is it? I will attack the Narset, and I suspect they'll block with the Tamiyo. So our plan is to Bowmasters here. Alright, we're having another look with the Narset. This can't find them a white source of the Supreme Verdict. If they find a non-basic white land, then they're going to be Wasteland off of it, and it's going to be problematic. Another Cage, sure. You can play the Cage. They're cracking this clue. I will take my free Bowmaster damage, please. We will kill the Narset first, and then I'll get draw and give us a little bit more power. Very much just looking for a white source here. No fails. This is still 2 turns until they can Supreme Verdict us, unless they're running like a random Mystic Gate, which would be quite funny. Right, let's Brainstorm. We don't want this Archon of Cruelty. I don't really want this Animate Dead either. The Reanimate, no good either, but this is lower mana value, so maybe it works if we borrow something out. So we play this. Is there a sorcery in the graveyard yet? There is not. So I'll crack this for a Underground Sea, and I will cast this Ponder. Is that better than casting? It's working out it's better than casting the Borrower, the Bowmasters with mana up. Okay, so there is a Borrower, so we could do some Borrower stuff potentially. I just like the Borrower because it's a threat though. So we will do it like this. Grows us to a 5/6. Then we can mill the other cards off with the Barrowgoyf. No threats. We could have stacked the Borrower on top so we would get it back. That might have been slightly smarter, and we could have kept the Ponder. I think that would be the correct way to sequence that. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we have lethal damage and Narset. Unlikely to answer everything right now. I think we fire this off when they don't have a Force of Will in hand. Ping our opponent down. So we've now put lethal damage on board. So we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage. And they played their land this turn, right? They played an island, which means they can't play a white source and plow. So I think they're just cold to what we're about to do, which is just turn our guy sideways. Attack for lethal? Yeah. Okay, just a pretty clean 2-0 there. Alright, that is the end of the league, and we managed to showcase quite nicely that last match that we can just board into a fair plan and play around Graveyard Hate. Our opponent kept a hand that was kind of relying on the Graph Digger's Cage a little bit, and they just couldn't play their game plan. We also saw the downside of being a deck with a bunch of basics. Now, if they had like one island and a bunch of Tundras in their deck, they would have white mana and they could probably deploy some removal spells. But yeah, a pretty comfortable 4-1. We got buried by the lands deck, which is nice to see in some ways. But let's talk about this list. So, clearly this is still a very, very strong deck. I prefer this build to the previous build I played like a couple of weeks ago or whatever it was. I think people are starting to coalesce around what the good builds are. Obviously, MircaleChen won the Legacy Championship in China. I think it was 80-something players, so not an enormous one like an Eternal Weekend, but still a reasonable sized tournament for a Legacy. And they took it down with this one. I think it was it 6 rounds and then cut to top 8, something like that. But I really like the Metamorphosis Fanatic, and if I was playing this, I would swap one Animate Dead for Metamorphosis Fanatic. Metamorphosis Fanatic is not as good as Animate Dead in Game 1, but it's way better in Game 2 and 3, and you play way more sideboarded games than you do main board games. So that would be kind of my little tweak I would do, because it just gives you a little bit more juice in the post-board games. But yeah, the deck is very strong. I'm not sure if Fatal Push is the best removal spell right now. It's very good, and I can understand why it's here. We have Brazen Borrower for big things, or Archon of Cruelty for big things as well, so this is to pick up the little things. And this is obviously going to be 1 mana removal against Delver or Secrets decks, which is a good place to be. But I don't know if you want something that can kill some of the slightly bigger monsters. But being able to hit like 1 to 4 drops is probably fine. Sometimes we had to think carefully about how we were going to get the Revolt, because we only got 6 fetch lands. We do have the 3 Wastelands as well, which can certainly add towards that. But you do have to think carefully about your Revolt. It is an important part of managing your resources if you need to hit some bigger creatures with this. But yeah, the deck is very solid. It's not really a deck that I love a great deal. I think it's a bit weird having a sort of tempo-y deck that can kind of splash this reanimation plan. I'm not the hugest fan of that being a thing that exists. I also think that the mana existing in this deck, the way it does, with being 16 lands but also having perfect mana all the time, is kind of interesting. But there are downsides to that, because Dauthi Voidwalker, this wants you to fetch non-basics. So that kind of does mess with your get 1 island, get 1 swamp, and go to town plan. But yeah, the deck is cool. It's definitely been taken down a peg. It feels a lot fairer now than it did when I had Psychic Frog. Psychic Frog just upped our blue count, so we had 4 more blue cards in our deck, which is obviously pretty busted. As well as the fact that we had, Psychic Frog, which is one of the best creatures ever printed. It's definitely a top 3 creature. So glad to see that gone. And I think this deck is a lot fairer. I thought this deck would just be completely busted still, and just be like pretty much one of the best things to do after Nadu. And, it is like the 6th most played deck. It's been taking a lot of trophies and things, and it won a challenge yesterday, I think. So, or when I'm recording this, it was yesterday. So it's clearly, a very solid deck, and it's still one of the top decks in the format. I think it took more of a hit than I was expecting from the Psychic Frog, but I think as people put a little bit more work into it, we'll find that this is still one of the best things you can do. And whether or not it needs to be taken down a peg when we get some stuff later on, I don't know. Which I'm glad to say that I don't know. Before it was, okay, I'll play with Psychic Frog for a couple of leagues, this card needs to be banned. Let's spend 3 months having a miserable time. Whereas now it's like, okay, yeah, this is a powerful thing to be doing in the meta. It doesn't feel like it's unbeatable at all, and there's definitely ways to attack it. So, yeah. Enjoying Legacy a lot more at the moment than I have been before the bannings, but you can still play decks like this, as well as some of the other decks that you can still play from before as well. So, yeah, Legacy in a much healthier place than it was. Even though I wanted more bans, I think the bans that they did do have made a noticeable difference. It is a little bit still too combo heavy as a format right now, but I think we're in a much happier space, and I hope you enjoyed watching the big evil of the last format, where it's now just, a bit of an evil, right? I quite enjoyed playing this deck today, though. We had a lot of fun stuff. There's lots of cool interactions and some pretty sweet lines, and you can definitely get more out of it the more time you spend rehearsing all your plays. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.